In the second video of this first lesson for Section 2, we will continue our look at subtracting fractions with like denominators, concretely or pictorially. Here, we will use the fraction strips and number line modeling process to subtract fractions with like denominators. We will again give consideration to two types of questions. Given a visual, determine the answer to a given subtraction calculation, and given the calculation, we will represent it by modeling in order to determine the answer. Always remember to check your final answer to make sure it's in simplest form. And again, as we use the fraction strips and number line modeling process to subtract fractions, we will look at subtraction often as the idea of taking things away. So fraction strips and the number line. Use the given model to determine the difference. Dealing with a number line, the first thing that I would like for you to consider are the increments, or what are we going up by here? The number of equal sections from 0 to 1 in this case. So if I count them up, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if I look at the fraction strips that I've been given here, it makes sense because they all have a denominator of 8. And in fact, what we were given, if we count them up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 5 1/8 fraction strips, representing 5/8. And the oval and arrow combination is telling us that we're going to remove or take away 2 of those. So I'm going to subtract 2/8. And if I do that, we are left with 3/8, which is simplest form. In example 2, we're going to use modeling to calculate 4/5 minus 3/5. My denominator is 5. The common denominator here is 5. So I'm going to split up my number line into 5 equal sections between 0 and 1. And I'm going to put down 4 1/5 strips to give me, or to represent, 4/5. We're told that we have to take away, we have to subtract 3/5. There we go. So we're going to remove those. And what are we left with? We are left with 1 1/5 fraction strip. Therefore, 4/5 minus 3/5 equals 1/5. Simplest form. Let's look at another example. Use modeling to calculate 7/10 minus 5/10. My like denominator here is 10. So my number line will be split into 10 equal sections between 0 and 1. And to represent the 7/10, I will put down 7 1/10 strips. There we have it. So 10 equal sections between 0 and 1, and 7 1/10 strips placed down. What are we asked to take away? We're asked to take away 5/10. So I'm going to remove those 5 1/10 strips, and we're left with 2 1/10 strips. In other words, 7/10 minus 5/10 equals 2/10. But we're not quite done. This one can reduce. 2 and 10 are both even numbers. 2 is the GCF. So I will get 1/5. So let's examine fraction strips and the number line in a slightly different way when we're subtracting fractions. And what I want you to consider, first of all, is 8 subtract 3. And you could look at this as, well, what do I need to add to 3 to get 8? Or if we look at it in a number line sense, I'm saying, well, I'm going to start at 8, and I'm going to take away 3. So this arrow is the idea of jumping backwards 3. Well, where do we end up? Right here, at 5. So 8 subtract 3 equals 5. We're going to take a similar approach with fractions. So let's have a second look at subtracting fractions using fraction strips and the number line. So here we're going to use the model to determine the difference. And when we have fraction strips and a number line, I would really like for you to pay close attention to your number line first of all. So between 0 and 1, it's been divided up into 12 equal sections, giving us the twelfths, which have been put in on the number line for you. So 1 12, 2 12, 3 12, and so on. I would like you to pay very close attention to where the fraction strips end off. And here they end off at 5 twelfths. So the minuend, fancy word, the fraction coming out in front, will be 5 twelfths. And we're going to subtract 4 twelfths. I have 4 of these 1/12 strips placed in. So we're going to go back 4 twelfths. And where do we end up? Well, we end up at 1 12th. So 5 twelfths, take away 4 twelfths, equals 1 12th. Simplest form. So for our second example, we're going to use a similar process to carry through the calculation of 7/9 minus 2/9. Want to draw attention to the common denominator of 9 first, because that's going to tell us that we need to make a number line between 0 and 1 that's been divided into 9 equal sections. And the ninths have been put in for you here. Next, we look at our minuend. We look at that first fraction. And that tells us where to go on our number line first. So we go to the 7/9. We're going to subtract 2/9. So I put in 2 1/9 fraction strips, and we're going to jump back. And the question becomes, well, where do we end up? We end up at 5/9. So what that tells us, 7/9 subtract 2/9 equals 5/9. And that cannot reduce. And now I would like you to proceed to the activities for lesson 1.